Good evening, it's Friday, 11th of April, and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Trade shift. India ends key transshipment route for Bangladesh, raising trade tensions. Defense aid. UK expands military support for Ukraine amid escalating conflict with Russia. Turtle rescue. Sea Turtle Hospital offers hope through innovative rehabilitation efforts.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Yasiru Bitana.
Good evening once again. India has revoked a key transshipment facility that allowed Bangladeshi exports to pass through its land borders, a move expected to disrupt regional trade and strain bilateral relations.
India has ended a key arrangement that allowed Bangladesh to transship its exports cargo to third countries via Indian airports and seaports. The facility granted in June of 2020 was seen as a major gesture to enhance trade connectivity between the two nations. But as of the 8th of April, that agreement has officially been rescinded. Citing congestion and delays at Indian ports and airports, New Delhi said the decision was necessary to avoid logistical bottlenecks and protect its own export operations. The move comes just days after Bangladesh's interim leader Mohammad Yunus made controversial remarks in China. Speaking at a business event, Yunus hinted at Bangladesh's leverage over India's landlocked northeastern states, calling the region a potential extension of the Chinese economy. Tensions have been simmering since the ousting of Sheikh Hasina's government last August, with India raising concerns about the treatment of minorities and rising radicalization in Bangladesh. While the cancellation of the transshipment deal does not affect Bangladesh's trade with Nepal and Bhutan, which continues under the WTO agreements, experts see it as a clear signal of strained relations.
President Donald Trump's announcement and the imposing of new tariffs have sent shockwaves through the global economy, triggering market turmoil and raising fears of a worldwide recession. For more on this, we have our other World News special correspondent, Rasita Chandradasa, who's joining us from Tokyo, Japan. Over to you, Rasita.
Hello, Yasiru. It has been a wild week for the Tokyo markets, where the markets went up and down like a seesaw. In fact, since last week, where the US president announced during his reciprocal tariff day, all the markets, not just Tokyo, has been on a topsy-turvy ride. So in Tokyo today, we had the Nikkei had a 3% down compared to yesterday, where we had a mild up. Not just a mild, it actually a 4 to 5% increase from the previous day. So why this is happening is obviously the US president's newly announced reciprocal tariffs. And what this is doing for Japan is, even though he took a pause for like 90 days, he's still going to implement the basic 10% tariff for most of the countries in the world, including Japan. So this means most of the Japanese goods that goes to Japan, including the famous hybrid car Prius, would have a 10% additional tax on top of the GSTs or whatever they implement after that. So the Japanese government past few days had a conversation with the US president, and we don't know much details about the outcome, but they were very positive on that they can get some kind of a deal. That is exactly what the Trump wants. And bear in mind, Japan has a huge trade surplus versus the US. We export far more than what we import. So it's quite natural that the US president mentioned, even in his speeches, that especially Japan and Korea and China as their main culprits. And Tokyo is heading towards a weekend after another heavy ride on the stock market. And next week, it's also going to be very interesting because we never know what Trump would do next. Over to you, Yusuf.
Thank you. That was our other World News special correspondent, Rasita Chandradasa, who joined us from Tokyo, Japan. The European Union has called for a more balanced relationship with China, emphasizing the need for reciprocity and fair competition in trade and investment.
In a message aimed at recalibrating Europe's ties with China, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said that there are clear opportunities to deepen bilateral relations, but added that balance must shift. His comments echo a sentiment expressed in the European Union's 2019 policy framework, which identified China not only as a partner but also a strategic rival and economic competitor. Sanchez's diplomatic visit comes as Europe contends with the ripple effects of US President Donald Trump's escalating tariff strategy, with Washington pulling back from certain multilateral trade norms. Sanchez seeks to fill a gap, framing Spain as a bridge builder between the EU and Beijing. The Chinese stop follows Sanchez's earlier visits to Vietnam and other parts of Asia during this three-day tour, part of a broader push to strengthen Spain's global role amid shifting geopolitical winds. This is Sanchez's third visit to China in 3 years, underscoring a continued interest in keeping dialogue open, especially as the EU navigates complex relations with its largest trading partner in Asia.
In a significant foreign policy move, South Korea has established official diplomatic relations with Syria, signaling a new chapter in its Middle East engagement amid evolving regional dynamics.
Syria has now become the 194th country in the world to form diplomatic relations with South Korea, marking a milestone for the country as it now has formal ties with all UN member states, except North Korea. Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol visited Syria's capital city Damascus this week and signed a joint statement on Thursday local time with his counterpart Assad al-Shaibani. The two sides held a meeting where Cho said South Korea is willing to contribute to reconstruction efforts in Syria and discussed the possibility of Korean companies participating in rebuilding the country. He also promised Seoul will provide humanitarian assistance, including medicine, medical equipment, and rice. During his visit, Cho also met the country's interim president, Ahmed al-Shara, and said taking a firm stance against extremism and eliminating chemical weapons will help create an environment conducive to the country's development. South Korea started to work on forging diplomatic ties with Syria after more than 13 years of war recently put an end to the brutal Assad dictatorship, which had maintained a close relationship with North Korea for decades. The Assad family regime, which ruled the country for more than 50 years, collapsed in December during a major offensive by opposition forces. Syria has had diplomatic ties with North Korea since 1966, but the fall of the dictatorship brought about a significant shift in its relations with Pyongyang. Now that South Korea has forged ties with nations that have been close allies of the North, including Cuba last year, this latest diplomatic development is expected to further isolate Pyongyang on the global stage.
Heightened security has been deployed around former South Korean President Yoon's private residence as he prepares to vacate following legal proceedings, with authorities citing safety concerns and potential unrest.
Former South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol bid farewell to the presidential compound in Seoul's Hannam-dong district today, marking the final chapter in his short, turbulent presidency. With a smile and a wave, Yoon greeted dozens of supporters gathered at the gate, shaking hands before departing for his private apartment in southern Seoul, accompanied by his wife and their 11 pets. Outside his new residence, scenes of mixed emotions unfolded. Supporters chanted his name and declared loyalty, while critics held signs demanding the death penalty for the ousted leader, as police kept a close watch. Yoon's downfall stems from his controversial declaration of martial law in December, when he attempted to suspend the National Assembly and deploy troops around Parliament, accusing liberal lawmakers of obstructing his agenda. The Assembly quickly reversed his move and impeached him. The Constitutional Court upheld that decision last week, triggering an early presidential election set for the 3rd of June. Political analysts say Yoon is far from done. With South Korea's heading to the election season, he is expected to influence the People Power Party's candidate selection, potentially positioning an ally who could pardon him if convicted.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. Mass anti-government protest, ignited by the recent arrest of the Istanbul mayor, continue to escalate, with thousands of students and opposition supporters clashing with police over what they call political persecution. The wave of demonstrations that erupted last month after the arrest of Istanbul's mayor shows no sign of waning, with opposition figures vowing to force the hand of President Erdogan and trigger early elections. University students have joined the movement in growing numbers, despite a continued crackdown that has now seen nearly 2,000 people detained across the country. The government insists the arrests are lawful and necessary for national stability. President Erdogan, meanwhile, maintains that legal proceedings against Imamoglu are unrelated to politics, accusing the opposition of exploiting the moment to sabotage Turkey's democratic order. International concern is growing. The European Union has urged Ankara to uphold democratic norms, while critics accuse the West of staying too quiet. CHP leaders say the silence of global allies only emboldens authoritarianism. With weekly demonstrations gaining momentum and opposition calls intensifying, Turkey's political crisis appears far from over. As the June presidential election approaches, the pressure on the government is likely only to increase. As Passover approaches, Israeli families anxiously await news on the hostages held by militants, clinging to hope that ongoing negotiations will bring a resolution and allow loved ones to return home during the sacred holiday season. This year's Passover arrives with heavy hearts for many Israelis. The holiday, which commemorates the Israelites' escape from bondage in ancient Egypt, now carries the weight of modern-day captivity. 18 months after the October 7th attacks, 59 hostages remain in Gaza. For the second year in a row, their absence is deeply felt across dinner tables across the country. Many families will leave an empty chair at their Seder table, a symbol of loved ones still held in captivity. The traditional Seder, filled with songs of liberation, now echoes with grief, uncertainty, and the pain of waiting. A recent ceasefire brought home only a handful of hostages and raised hope, only to see negotiations stall once again. For the families of those still missing, each holiday that passes becomes another reminder of time lost. Support groups and mental health organizations reported rise in emotional distress during this season as the public grapples with collective trauma and ongoing uncertainty. Still, many continue to hold on to hope that next year, freedom will not just be a story told, but a reality lived. The United Kingdom has announced an expanded military aid package for Ukraine, reaffirming its unwavering support of Kyiv amid the war with Russia and calls for greater allied coordination to counter ongoing security threats in Eastern Europe. Britain pledged £450 million, or roughly $580 million, in fresh military aid for Ukraine. The move comes as European allies seek to bolster Ukraine's defenses and bargaining power on the battlefield as momentum builds towards a possible peace deal with Russia. Of the total support, £350 million will come from the UK's previously announced $4.5 billion defense commitment for 2025. The remainder will be funded in partnership with Norway as their wider effort of involving NATO and other Ukraine-supporting nations. The aid includes essential repairs and maintenance for Ukraine's frontline vehicles and equipment, as well as critical assets like radar systems, anti-tank mines, and hundreds of thousands of drones, tools deemed vital in repelling ongoing Russian advances. With more than 2 years of the war behind them, Ukrainians and their allies continue to hope that pressure on Moscow, both militarily and diplomatically, will help bring an end to one of Europe's most devastating modern conflicts. A tragic helicopter crash in New York's Hudson River has killed 5 family members, prompting investigations into the incident as authorities work to determine the cause behind one of the deadliest AI incidents in recent months.
Video from a bystander captured the splash of parts from a tourist helicopter that crashed into New York's Hudson River on Thursday. New York City Mayor Eric Adams said all 6 people aboard, including 3 children, were killed in the crash. Adams said the victims were believed to have included a family from Spain, as well as the pilot. Officials said the New York helicopter's tour aircraft departed at about 3 p.m. and later lost control, hitting the water upside down near Lower Manhattan. New York City Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch said divers helped remove the victims from the water. The Federal Aviation Administration said the helicopter was a Bell 206. The FAA and the National Transportation Safety Board will investigate, with the NTSB leading the investigation.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. A Florida-based marine hospital is giving injured sea turtles a second chance at life, using innovative rehabilitation techniques to restore the health of these endangered creatures and raise awareness about ocean conservation and environmental responsibility.
These young sea turtles are gifted a rare opportunity in nature, second chance at life. This group of critically endangered Kemp's Ridley sea turtles released into the waters of Florida's Cape Canaveral seashore after a bout with this past winter's wrath. The colder than average temperatures left these and hundreds of other turtles sluggish and nearly lifeless, a term better known as cold stun. Hospital, which has been around for 40 plus years, has the largest capacity in the world for the rehabilitation of this beloved marine reptile, uniquely positioning the hospital in the vast network of care centers and aquariums, helping save turtles that may end up stranded on beaches. At least 19 of the patients the hospital has treated so far this year arriving from New England, where strandings have become an annual occurrence. According to NOAA, this past January was the 25th coolest along the East Coast in the last 95 years. Turtles' body temperatures mirror surrounding waters. Once below 50 degrees, their circulation and organ function can become compromised, leading to death. There have been 750 stranded sea turtles so far this year in Florida, which includes turtles that may have been hurt by boat strikes or marine debris. Sadly, that means some can't be released, but they remain ambassadors to their species. Researchers have been working together to investigate the cause of strandings in recent years, which some believe is a sign that sea turtle populations are rising, but it could test already overwhelmed caregivers trying to rescue and rehabilitate these hard-shell patients.
A woman was unable to board her return flight from Puerto Rico after an emotional support parrot was denied entry on board, highlighting ongoing debates around airline policies, mental health accommodations, and exotic pet animals.
This grandma finds herself stranded in the Caribbean because the airline won't let her fly home with her pet parrot. 76-year-old Maria Fraterigo flew from New York to San Juan with her parrot, Plucky, to spend the winter in Puerto Rico. No problem getting there, but when she tried to fly home, Maria was told at the airport in San Juan, Plucky wasn't allowed on the plane back home. Maria won't leave her feathered friend behind, so she and her beloved pet are stuck in limbo. In a statement, Frontier Airlines declares, "We are in contact with the customer and her family to assist her in returning home. As a matter of standard policy, as noted on our website, we do not normally transport parrots on our aircraft. They say Polly wants a cracker, but Plucky wants a ticket."
Well, that's a wrap from all of us here at World News Tonight. Stay tuned as Anuradha Vikramasinghe will be sure to be joining you with the Nightly Business Report. I'm Yasiru Vitana, and we are leaving with stunning visuals of Osaka City and Expo 2025. Thank you for watching. Have a great night.